My name's Majid, like magic.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Stephanie McAuliffe, and I first would like to thank Majid for bringing me here today to speak in front of all of you fine folks. So, how many of you grew up with the silent rule of, we don't talk about these things? Have you ever thought that you seemed more worried about taking care of your partner more than you do about taking care of yourself? Have you ever lied awake at night in bed thinking to yourself, I can't believe they came home drunk again? Have you ever asked yourself, should I stay or should I go? Do you feel like you're not being heard? Have you ever felt like you could burst from all the things that you're holding inside of you, or feel the lump in your throat from all the words that are stuck there because you can't talk about what's going on? If that's you, I'm here to show you a way out, because I lived all of those questions that I just posed to you. And you're seeing someone who now leads a life full of hope and abundance. I ran from my story and myself for many, many years. It took me being brought to my knees at the height of what should have been an amazing time in my life for me to finally pay attention and to listen to the whispers and to finally listen to my heart. I was born into a family deeply entrenched with alcoholics. I am the fourth generation of women in my family affected by living around alcoholics and living around the disease. And in my family, we had the unspoken rule of, we don't talk about these things. And that really impacted me for much of my young life, but the most profound impact was at the age of 11, when my stepbrother threatened to kill me if I ever told anybody about what was happening. And so I became more of an introvert, and I got quiet. And in 8th grade, I found art, and I found drugs, and I found music. Because with art, I could see the beauty of the things that were around me, and I could express myself. I got very active in art class. With drugs, I didn't feel the pain, and I could laugh. And I remember when my neighbor across the street offered to show me how to smoke pot, and the first time I did, and the burn and the feeling of the smoke going into my lungs, but then the lightness, and a lightness that I couldn't ever remember feeling before, and then the laughter. And it ultimately went away, but it was a temporary release. And then with music, I could dance, and I could sing, and I could feel the rhythm of the music that was around me, because I had shut down my own feelings. So with the art and the drugs and the music, it started an identification of the things that were around me, because I was already empty inside. And so it's no wonder that I ultimately married 2 alcoholics, because I was so comfortable around alcoholics, and being with them felt like being at home. Except until September 11th, 2001 came along, 9/11, and I worked in Jersey City, and I watched the second plane bank around the Statue of Liberty, and from weeks and months, I looked at the wreckage across the river, and every day when I went to work or went out to lunch or was leaving, I could smell the smoke, and it was a different smell, and you knew what had happened over there. And it was during that time that I was approaching my 40th birthday, and I said to myself, life is too short. I can't keep living like this. Because I was trying to hold together a marriage, because I didn't want to be divorced like my mother or my father or my brother. You know, I wanted a family, the family that I didn't feel like I had when I was growing up. But I was already doing more for him than I was for myself. And so I initiated the divorce. And it's sometimes amazing how we don't realize the insanity that we're living in until we're out of it, or that we're moving out of it. As we were splitting things up, I counted all the TVs in the house, and there were 10 TVs. And there's a small enclosed porch that was his room. And he had 3 TVs just in that room, so we would try to watch 3 TVs, 3 programs all at the same time. But invariably, the TVs were on in each of the different rooms, because when he went to the bathroom or went to the kitchen to go get a drink, he wouldn't lose the continuity of the TV show that he was watching. And there was always noise. And when there's always noise, I wasn't able to pay attention to what was really going on. And so I ignored it. and focused more on my work and the house and the gardens and everything around me until I finally, like I said, 9/11 was a turning point for me. And it's funny because in the property settlement agreement, I said, I'm going to take 2 of the TVs, and he was upset, and he actually replaced one of them. And I now think of the small house that I moved into, and I didn't even call the cable company or attach the stereo to the speakers for the first week. I lived in complete silence. And I thought I had everything together, and I thought everything was great, and I met my second husband, and I thought, well, he's safe, I know his family, his dad babysat my dad when they were kids, good family, whatnot. And our first 5 years were amazing, and then as his unhappiness increased, his drinking increased. And really being with him showed me the insanity of what my life had become. But being with him was also a gift, because this is where at the height of my career on Wall Street, and I was managing an $85 million program, I was brought to my knees when he went into rehab. And I realized that I had nothing. And I really didn't have a lot when I left number 1, but I focused myself on my career and the bigger projects and the bigger programs and the better job, because that was how I identified myself. But with number 2, I realized again I was doing more for him than he was for himself. And this is where I ultimately made the decision to honor myself. I still tried to keep things together for a while. We got divorced. But this is where I found my first coach, and I made the investment into myself. And I remember in our first group coaching call, the question was posed to us, how do you want to feel? And I was stunned, and I was brought to my knees because I couldn't answer the question. Nobody had ever asked me, how do you want to feel? And I cried, and I can still go back to that feeling, because I knew that was really the beginning of my emergence. After so many years of putting everything of myself and everything around me, this was my time for me. And so I spent time working. I worked with a couple of different coaches over the past few years. But my passion now is to help people where I was 5 years ago, and to break free of all of the things that are old stories and the old pains and all the things that we hold inside of ourselves, that lump in our throat that we feel like we can't talk about what's going on. And my passion is to help people break free of these old cycles. One person, Ernie, grew up with an abusive alcoholic father whose brother she calls a narcissist, and they keep wanting to really put all of their pain on her, and she's now created healthy boundaries for herself, and she doesn't bite in and take the bait of when they throw it out to her. She's saying, no, I'm not going to live like this anymore. And so she's now doing things for herself that she had never done, as I had never done for myself. Another woman, Pam, that I work with, she's staying in her marriage because just because we make this decision to invest in ourselves doesn't mean that we're going to leave the situation that we're in. Really, absolutely nothing has happened in her life, and she may never leave her 30-plus year marriage, but she's now putting up boundaries again, and she's saying what it is that she needs. And sometimes it's as simple as walking out of the room because you don't want to have the conversation they're trying to pull you into. And really all of this work, so I've broken my family cycle of silence. I've broken our unwritten rule, and that's part of why I do the work that I do when I wrote the book that I did, is because we all need to be able to give a voice to our stories and unlock this energy we're holding inside of ourselves. Because it's ultimately coming to a place where everything that has happened in your life is perfect. And it's happened just as it was supposed to bring you to this place where you are standing and sitting right now, free of your past, free of the pain, and filled with an incredible hope for your future. And it's amazing, over the years, I worked with multiple therapists, And the therapist always focused on the what. And I never got past the what. In the short time of working with a coach, I got to my why, and I was able to free myself of it and then move forward. And so I will tell you, as I approach my 56th birthday, it is never too late. It is never too late to start. I look at myself in the mirror now and I like who I see. I look at a picture of myself from a few months ago to 2 years ago, and I look 10 years younger, and I can't believe I walked around looking like that, because I looked 10 years older than I do now. There's a quote from Brene Brown that I love. If we own our story, we get to write the ending. If we don't own our story owns us. So are you ready to own and rewrite your story? Raise your hand if you're ready to honor yourself and free yourself of the lump in your throat. And so I have a sheet that you can all fill out. What I do is a discovery session so that we can talk and find out if you really are ready. I only work with a few people at a time because I want to make sure that I'm giving you my full undivided attention to help you quickly work through all these things you've held together for so long and to live a life full of hope and abundance. Thank you.
My name's Majid like magic.